And welcome back to Geek Out SA. It's Friday and we're having fun. We're back.
Yeah.
You got to they got to see you for a little bit.
They got to see me do what? Was it when I was picking my nose?
Everything.
Oh no! You're not supposed to let people see you pick your nose.
It was like transparent.
Oh.
Oh, that's like you can like see right through my shirt.
I know, it's cool, isn't it?
Uh-oh. Because of the yellow?
Because of yellow.
Ruh-roh.
And that alien head doesn't work. You have to turn that off too.
The alien head's not working?
Yeah, when it goes on the green, it lights everything out.
It makes a hot mess. But it was so cool. That's okay. We're distracted by Vince. We're all squirrel.
Yeah. So we're talking about am I a geek? Are you a geek?
Are you a geek?
So yeah, I think I'm a geek. Yeah.
Well, okay. So let me say a few things before I say something that people might think is mean. So originally, the word geek, the definition for the word geek is someone that is socially inept or someone that is socially awkward.
Well, even before that,
it was a circus performer.
It was a circus performer.
Somebody that like bit the head off of chickens.
Chickens.
Yeah. So we don't bite the head off of chickens unless we're Ozzy Osbourne, but that's bats, and he thought it was fake supposedly. And anyway, that's a long story. We're not going to talk about Ozzy, but the more modern, like 70s, 80s definition
is that where? When did the word geek really come into play? Do you think it was? I don't think it was quite the 70s.
I think so. I didn't like do research on the origins of the word geek and when it transformed.
But when do you think? Was it in the 70s?
I think it was in the 70s.
Or in the 80s? Or was
no,
it
I think it was in the 70s.
What do you think, Stuart?
It was probably when it came in as a geek.
Like when people were really starting to call people geeks and like associate them as...
Well, the word geek was typically when people were like math and science geeks, so I think that was like 40s and 50s.
Oh, well, I thought that was more nerd. Or did they kind of switch
I think they switched
over like in the 70s? Because it was like... Because, yeah, it used to be if you were into math and you were into science and you were smart and you had the glasses and everything, you were, I guess, a geek. But it kind of switched to where it was more of like if you're intelligent, you're a nerd. And if you're socially awkward and inept and you don't fit into social circles, then you become a geek. That's always been my understanding of it. That's how it's been used. And if you look it up... that's what it says, because I actually just had this conversation with some of my students the other day. And because it's much more acceptable now to be a geek. So it's kind of transformed. But I think in the 70s and 80s is when it really started, like comic books started to be more noticeable. There started to be more gaming groups that were noticeable. And then it became a stigma. And then you were like...
So do you think it like when... when did like...
Because then we have Star Wars. I think Star Wars catapulted, and that was in the 70s.
You had Batman and Superman in the 50s and the 60s. In the 70s, you had Spider-Man, the TV show, or the movie. Or they had a TV show, right, for Spider-Man? Or was
animated.
It movies?
No, they had, unfortunately, a TV show.
Yeah, they did have a TV show.
Yeah.
It was bad.
I used to watch it all the time. It was, but I like to watch that. What was there? Condor Man. There was a movie for that. That wasn't necessarily a comic book, but it was like a comic book genre.
Yeah. According to Google, because I can Google things.
Because you can Google.
It says the first published word using the word nerd was in a Dr. Seuss book in the 1950s.
In the 1950s.
So it was fairly common in the 1900s because of circus shows and stuff like that.
The word geek.
Yeah. But it wasn't until about the 60s and 70s. And it became hugely popular thanks to Happy Days.
Oh,
Happy
Days. Well, now that one I didn't know, but I was pretty close with the 70s. I figured Star Wars was one of the things that catapulted people into like the geekdom spotlight, basically, where you
But
were kind of
then
put
didn't
into
come
that.
out in 73?
Yeah, that's the 70s.
Or 74?
That's the 70s.
74.
That's the 70s. That would be
Yeah.
part of the 70s. I'm still going to argue that it was. Anyway, the whole point is it became a turn for people that that other people saw, especially like jocks, athletic people, saw as being socially inept, socially awkward.
Yeah.
So.
And we have the Kitchen Life channel watching us.
Oh,
Hi, guys. How's it going, Lennon?
So, for you to ask, are you a geek? In my opinion, yes. I don't mean to be mean, but yes, you're kind of like socially awkward. Not so much now that we're older, but when we were young, in our 20s, right? Are you getting glare?
Yeah, to like lay that down.
The producer's giving him direction. Yeah, I mean, from stories that you've told me from when you were in high school and stuff, from when we were in our 20s, you were a geek.
I mean, high school, that's when I started doing...
awkward. I mean, you didn't like smell or some of the things that people associate with like geekiness. Stop saying yes. The producer's saying yes, he did. It smelled really bad. But I definitely think if we're talking about in terms of that, because you were very big into like role-playing games.
Yeah, I used to do big time role-playing
And I'm
games.
even a really big geek, and then I even made fun of you because like the only time you skipped school was when you went on that like adventure, and it was kind of
that
really
wasn't the
geeky.
only time I skipped school.
That was
the
really
only
geeky.
time I did that in it was freshman year.
It was the only time you skipped school. Anyways, he doesn't want to... See, even now, because there's such a stigma on it, you don't want to admit it. You want to say, no, I'm not a geek, but you are.
No.
You're saying you're over there...
I'm not saying that I'm not a geek. I'm saying that, no, that's not the only time I skipped school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, oh, yeah, it was just one time when he was a freshman. And no, that's not true.
Because I think you're a nerd and a geek.
But when I did that, what happened was we set up this entire thing to where it was at a point where like private schools had already been out for the summer. Mm-hmm. So we went out, and what we did, first thing we did is we got a ride from one of the seniors to, I think it was back in the day, it was called the Dungeon. It's not there. It used to be on Fredericksburg. Mm-hmm. No, even before that, we ended up going to breakfast. I think we ended up going to like Randy's or something like that. Then we headed over to the Dungeon, which was on Fredericksburg, the comic book store there that had RPGs and stuff like that, and hung out there for a while. But the entire point was to go see Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Mm-hmm. So when we did that, we called it, we called our little thing, because we were like into like role-playing games, we called it the Crusade.
Right, so anytime you name a trip that you're going on with your friends, if you name your vehicles, I think that that's a definition of being a geek.
No, come on. Naming your vehicles is not just geeky. Tons of guys name their cars. But tons of guys don't name them.
It depends on what you name
what you
your
name
car.
them is different.
Okay, that's where I'm going with this.
I used to name them Greek and Roman goddesses.
Yeah. No, I know. That's why I'm just bringing it up.
Nerd, yes.
Yeah, nerd. I mean, there are certain things, right, that qualifies you as being a geek. You were a nerd, too, because you were an intellectual. But I think some of those things, like naming your trips, like having little things with your group of friends where you went on the crusade. My mm-hmm. friends and I did it, too, so I'm not looking down on you. I'm just saying... Like, I've always known.
No. She tells this story all the time and makes money, always saying, this is the only time you skip school.
Well, because
I was the only time I skipped school.
I mean, hopefully none of my students are watching.
Not
but
that you
I was
should
really
skip
bad.
school.
I was really bad, and so we're not going to talk about skipping school, but I was really bad, and so when we were younger, I used to, like, poke fun at you because I was much naughtier in my younger years and just, you didn't so much as I did. That's all. That's all I'm saying. But I can't talk because then when my friends and I would go, we would name it things too, and it would have names, and we would do stupid things. Yeah.
So now I've learned something.
And we actually did really dangerous things because nobody was watching us. So we tried to like joust with cars and stuff like that, and broomsticks, and and metal trash can lids. And so
the Kitchen Life channel, or Lennon, says some guys name their motorcycles too. I actually haven't named my motor. No, I did name my motorcycle.
You did.
But I didn't name it a goddess.
Well, there you go.
I just named it the Green Alien.
Yeah. It's okay. It's fine.
Because it's green.
It's fine.
And it has like alien eye.
I mean, since it's a Vulcan, I'm surprised you didn't name it like Spock or something. But,
no.
But it's a dude's name, so I guess you wouldn't, unless you knew like a female Vulcan.
Hey, you green-blooded alien. So, yes.
I think also being... Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Throughout my life, my dad was the one that introduced me to Star Wars. So, I saw that at an early age. Mm-hmm. I think I saw that at the Aztec. I think like 2 years after it actually came out, but they would show it ever so often because it became bigger as the.
I'm sure they had events too. Yeah. Like when the newest one came out, they would show the older ones, and that's how we saw it because we were very little when it first came out.
And that's what really drew me to Star Wars and being a big Star Wars geek, but also Superman. Because my grandmother used to, because I saw the movie Superman.
With Christopher Reeve.
With Christopher Reeve, and I wanted to always wear the cape. And I still have it to this day. The second one, I don't have the first one. The first one went to shreds.
Because you wore it.
Because I wore it all the time. But it was a nice satin cape. So that my little great-grandmother made for me.
That's very sweet. Yes, we still have it. So earlier you did something just a few minutes ago, a few seconds ago, that I think is also the quality of a geek, is you quote lines from movies or television shows.
What did I quote?
The green-blooded alien.
Oh.
Yeah. See, you don't even realize you're doing it. You do it so often.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you used to say stuff, and I'm not, and maybe it's because I'm a girl, but I know girls that do it too. That's not one of my geek qualities, but you would say stuff and I'd be like, oh, that's really good. That's very, prophetic or whatever. And then I'd find out that, it was somebody from a movie said it. And I was like, really, dude? Really?
Well, it's just like people reading it and then using stuff that they've read. It's the same thing.
People don't quote from books directly.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do.
They do. That's a girl thing. We're on to you now.
I don't do that. I don't quote from anything directly because I never pay any attention to anything long enough to be able to retain a quote. That's my problem.
Squirrel.
Squirrel.
There you go. Quoted from something right there.
I remember when we first started getting together, we would watch movies, and then I'd not look at the TV and look right at you and recite all of the lines of the movie that I've already seen.
Yeah. I think that's definitely, so if you're asking yourself, am I a geek? That's a geek quality. Mm-hmm. It's definitely something that, we used to consider a geek quality. I think it's still considered a geek quality if that's something, especially if it's like B movies, obscure movies, if it's like Little Trouble in Big China or something stupid like that, then
why do you have to say stupid like that?
I didn't mean stupid. I said that out loud, and that's not what I meant.
Ever.
I didn't mean that. So
Buckaroo Banzai.
Yeah. So things like that, I think that's definitely a geek quality. And I'm not saying that I'm not a geek. I totally am, but I just don't do any of these things yet. Mm-hmm. Well, kind of. We did name some of our excursions, but that's it so far. I think I'm actually very socially inept. Yeah. No, it was really bad. Yeah. Yeah, it's a thing. Okay. I admit it. It's a thing.
Doc Martens and...
No, I could not afford Doc Martens. That was not something I ever had. No. I still don't have a pair. That's on my bucket list.
So no, I was big into He-Man back in the day when I used to play with He-Man kids. I used to play with G.I. Joes. So.
Same, yeah. Yeah, same. And so if you're a girl and you're wondering, am I a geek? This used to be a qualifier back like in the 80s and stuff. There's a whole block of children. Mm-hmm. All the little boys are playing Star Wars and He-Man and G.I. Joe, and I'm the only little girl in the middle of that. So you used to be a geek girl if you were involved. I was
never a geek girl.
Obviously, you weren't, but you're talking about the boy side, and I'm talking about the girl side. Because I know that we want to be like gender neutral with everything, but I think that there are female qualities, male qualities that tend to be slightly different when you're a geek. I think that we have different qualities.
You can't say that now.
Well, I'm saying it.
All hate mail goes to Colleen.
Yes.
Geekoutsa.com.
Colleen at geekoutsa.com.
That's actually a thing.
That is a thing. So if you'd like to email me and tell me how wrong I am and how everything should be gender neutral, go right ahead.
Well, they can email me. Oh, I don't have an email address.
Yeah. But I do. I mean, when I was growing up, that was how I was categorized that way. Like, I'm out with the ninja stars and stuff.
So Writing Panda says, Vince was such a pretty geek girl.
Well, he was.
Funny story about that.
That's actually the story that he just told at his grandma's memorial.
On Halloween,
Vincent dressed up as a girl.
In college.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So wrong now.
Apparently I was really, really pretty.
He was very pretty. I don't know.
I didn't have facial hair
back
then.
Yeah, I like him with the facial hair, so I haven't seen him in about 18 years, because I think
I had no
2 years
facial hair,
in,
and that's when I was like super, super thin.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, he was super thin. I fed him a lot since. Yeah.
I don't believe it.
Oh no, I'm gonna show you pictures in a little while.
Okay.
I'm gonna put those up on Facebook, people. Y'all can see Vince when he was super thin. All he ate was like a can of tuna a day because he was in college and poor, and he was a dumb boy, and he didn't know how to do anything.
And that's changed how?
Well, now I feed him.
I made some steaks.
No, he made steaks and lobster tail last night.
Lobster tail last night. It was really good.
Yeah, it was really good. So back to, are you a geek?
Yeah.
So definitely when we were growing up, playing the role-playing games was definitely a huge indicator.
Super geeky.
It was a huge, huge indicator.
If you play role-playing games, you're
a geek.
You might be a geek.
Yeah, might be a geek. Reading comics. That was very much a geek thing to do. It wasn't something that you did and let other people know about unless you wanted to be called names.
I wasn't so much as buying geeks, buying geeks. Buying, yeah.
You bought geeks?
I bought geeks.
That's another show, people, that we're not going to get into on
I didn't
prime
do
time.
That. So I did. I didn't necessarily go and buy comics, but I had a lot of friends that did read comics. Saying, "Hey, check this out!" And I was like, "Oh, this is really cool."
Yeah, same.
So I would read a lot of comics from my friends, like Richard, back when I was in high school, and he turned me on to the different comics out there.
Yeah. We just didn't have a lot of expendable income, so there were a few. You know, my dad would get comics every once in a while because he was an artist, so he would use them for some of the drawings that he was doing for different projects, and he was also an art teacher, so he had them sometimes for examples, but it wasn't like I had a whole series. It was different things so that he could show some of the different character drawings. Archie was my big thing. We've talked about this a million times. So every birthday, Christmas, Valentine's Day, my parents would buy us presents. I would get an Archie digest. So I always loved those. We would get the paper, and my grandparents would get the paper, and then they'd let us have it. And the comics there, I would read the Spider-Man. I even used to read the Prince Valiant. I don't know why I like Prince Valiant, but I would read that.
I used to read that in the paper.
Yeah, in the Sunday paper.
Yeah,
I would read it every Sunday. So those were the comics that I got.
And Spider-Man.
Spider-Man, yeah.
I used to love reading Spider-Man all the time. Rain Pine says, do kids still make fun of people for having passion about stuff? No one makes fun of me anymore for nerdy things. They make fun of me for other reasons. But yeah, I think that's something that still happens. I think you've mention that happening
It
still?
doesn't
happen as much?
and it doesn't happen kind of the same way anymore.
I think it's more that you're not into whatever the flavor of the month is now.
Well, so many of them are into gaming, but it's video gaming or it's app gaming. Fortnite is a big deal, so a lot of them are into that. Everybody's a meme lord. They love memes. Memes are a thing. They still don't understand us for liking Star Wars and stuff. They think those things are boring. They think that those are boring. They want little 5-second sound bites. You know, it needs to be done, and they don't really like movies at all. So my students will still make fun of kids who like to read. Mm-hmm. That's an interesting thing. In my English language arts class, I have the gifted students. That's who I teach. And I have a pocket of like 4 kids, and they love to read. So when we do something in English language arts that's supposed to be about reading, everybody else complains, and these 4 are like really excited, and they'll talk to me about books that they've read, and they'll give me books to read, and we'll, you know, go back and forth, and the kids will pick at them and make fun of them for liking reading. But if you like a superhero or something like that, I have a gaming club after school, and some of the jocks are in it.
Yeah.
And it's tabletop gaming. It's Dungeons and Dragons. Like, I have a parent that comes and helps me to GM.
And is
and
it 5?
The kids.
Is it the new version 5?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they have an
and
app
they've really
now.
Streamlined that one. So.
Yeah, well, they have an app now where you can have your character on your phone and everything.
And then if you really want to learn how to play that, you can play that at Game Expo, March 15th through 17th.
That was a shameless plug.
Yes, it was.
That hurt my heart. That wasn't geeky at all. That was corporate America. That made me feel sad.
I have to do that kind of thing these days. So Writing Panda says Apex Legends now. Fortnite is losing popularity. I haven't actually looked at Apex Legends.
No, I haven't either.
So I don't know.
And I haven't heard about it.
Is it a similar gameplay for that? I'm asking.
Asking him. What other things did you think?
And he says you're a great teacher.
Oh, thank you. What other things did you think were geeky when you were growing up? I feel like
Latin Club was pretty geeky.
That's nerdy. I think that's different. I think that there's a difference between being an intellectual and being a geek.
Well, it depends on how...
Intellectual is more of a nerd, whereas pop culture.
But that's how we see it. That's how people of our age see it. How people younger than us see that. It's switched.
I never hear anybody say the word nerd anymore.
Well, geeky is the more intellectual, and nerd is the kind of like...
See, and I thought geeky had become more of the like enthusiast. They'll call each other like, I'm a meme geek. I'm a pizza geek. They use the word geek now as enthusiast. Mm-hmm. So like I'm all the kids that are in like choir and theater, and they're gonna be in Into the Woods. They call each other theater geeks.
Yeah, but the people that are into history, they're history geeks.
That's what
people
I mean.
People are into math, they're into math. They're math geeks.
But I think it's become more of geek means more now. You're an enthusiast of something, right? You love it so much that you're so ingrained in it that becomes kind of your life.
Yeah.
You know, even K-pop. The kids that love K-pop, they have a name for themselves, but the kids outside of that who don't like it, they call them the K-pop
Well,
kids.
It's just like when you have a passion for like RPGs, and that's all you want to play. Mm-hmm. Or you have a passion for Fortnite, and that's all you want to play, or Apex Legends, that's all you want to play. It's having that thing, but having so much knowledge about that specific thing that kind of like is where it's kind of switched from when our generation went through the geeky thing. And so we think...
Well, and it used to be, and maybe I'm wrong, but this is my feeling on it. It used to be in our generation, to be considered a geek, even among geeks, you had to be like extra. You had to be above and beyond. You had to be over the top. You had to have knowledge on top of knowledge of like what was canon and what was this, and this episode this happened, and this, like, something that I could never, I'm not that kind of person. Like, I cannot meet that criteria of geekiness that I feel like when we were growing up was kind of the criteria, right? To be in the geek club, so to speak, was you had to be almost obnoxious in your knowledge of whatever you were enthusiastic about.
Yeah, now everybody's just obnoxious, so it's...
Well, I think now it's easier to find facts because you're on your phone and you can just Google it, right? It's not like you have to keep all the knowledge in your head. It's not
like
the same.
It used to be. It's not. Although there are people that are still very passionate, and we have a lot of them on the show.
But I think that used to be a criteria to be, and I don't even think you're that far into.
It depends on what it is.
Really? Because I've never known you to be like that, and we've known people, a lot of people.
Obnoxious?
No, I know that you're obnoxious. I mean,
thanks.
You're welcome. No, I mean to be like in 1969, this happened with the storyline, and this thing happened, and like I don't feel like you have all those facts lined up about stuff.
Well, it depends. Like if you. Back in the day, I was big into Egyptology, and I could tell you everything. I was big into astronomy. I could tell you everything.
Right.
That was facts then.
That was current. I mean, you did. You thought Pluto was a planet, so.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
So did you.
I did. So I don't know. I think that it has.
Writing Panda says I'm obnoxious.
Yes, honey, you are. No. I think it's evolved over time. And even now it's gotten to be as, I feel like when we were younger, it was a broader thing. And now it's a little narrower. Like even shows like The Walking Dead. There are these people that are super fans of The Walking Dead, and they're so into it that they become Walking Dead geeks. Like they have all of this, and they even have the show after the show to talk about the show, to ponder about the show, to reminisce about the show that they just saw a few minutes ago. Like I feel like we've taken it
to a whole nother level.
Well, do you feel like we wanted to mainstream it because it was so hurtful and we wanted it to not be anymore?
No, but I don't think the people that were really passionate about it wanted it to be mainstream because they wanted it to be theirs, because the people that were big time into it, and we got back into this, 4 years ago, about when we did this show called Geek Enough. Like, are you geek enough? Do you know that much about thing? And then to where I was questioned if I was a geek.
Yeah.
And I was like,
well,
I make tabletop games. I GM games. I love Superman.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But getting off of that point.
Growing up and being put in that box, because I was put in that box. So we were called that. When I was growing up, I was called that in a negative way, right? I didn't dress the way people dressed. I hung out with all my awkward, weird friends. We played Risk. We played Dungeons and Dragons. We played GURPS. Like, we made obscure references to each other from a movie. Like, I couldn't quote lines, but I would know, like, what they were talking about, and I would say, oh, it's like that movie or whatever. We were weird, I guess, to other people, to jocks, to cowboys, to little gangbangers, whatever. We were weird. So we were the geeks. And it was hurtful because it seemed like they all had it together, and they used geek in a negative way. And it seems to me that geek used to also be synonymous with people that, like, didn't shower often or well, didn't have good hygiene, couldn't dress very well, kind of were socially inept in that way as well. So I feel like maybe moving forward as we got older, we wanted that not to be a thing anymore. Does that make sense? And so we've caused this kind of evolution of what it means to be a geek, and we're championing that being a geek is like an enthusiast.
So Generation X caused the shift?
I
Do you think?
I think so. What do you think?
I think it's content. There's more content available.
You think so?
Well, you've got to remember that the 70s there was the first blockbuster movie was Jaws.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, there was no blockbuster movies. Things just got released whenever throughout the country. There wasn't a focused point. So after Jaws came, then there was Star Wars, and Star Wars had a massive ad campaign behind it, and collect all the toys, even though the toys weren't ready.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all more...
You can buy this piece of cardboard.
And so
in
you
place
think
of all
now
your figures.
with like YouTube and Netflix and Hulu and HBO
I think
and everything.
I think it came before that.
No,
Even
but
before
the
that.
shift.
I think the shift started.
See, I think the shift started. I don't know.
I think the shift really started when X-Men came out.
But I think that it's people our age, our generation, who became directors and writers and who wanted to put this stuff in the forefront. And then it was people our age who had kids who were like, look, I don't want my kid to have to go through the same torture that I went through for being awkward or liking these things that people consider to be strange, awkward, geeky things.
I could see that.
So let me shift this. I mean, that's just my opinion.
That.
That's what I think kind of happened to it, is we kind of made this movement subtly, but then they moved it so far that some of the older geeks were like, oh, well, now they've ruined all my favorite playthings that I loved, and they've changed it all so that it's not true to the canon and it's not true to this. But for me, as someone who that was something so negative, for me, it feels great. Because now I see all these kids in junior high, and they don't make fun of each other for that kind of stuff. Like, you want to walk around wearing your anime shirt, go for it, right? Mm-hmm. You want to walk around with superhero shirts. Some of the kids walk around with shirts with dinosaurs on it and stuff. Like, back in our day, you'd have been thrashed. Totally thrashed. Verbally, physically, you would have been thrashed by the other kids for doing stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Wear a big lion head on your shirt or something.
You would have definitely been picked on.
Yeah. And nowadays it doesn't happen. Like, one of my kids, he wears this big old like Harry Potter shirt. Harry Potter's on the front and his wand's sticking out and there's sparks and Voldemort's on the back. And the kids are like, oh man, I like that shirt or whatever. Like, in our day, something like Harry Potter, you'd have been thrashed.
Well, like, even when I was like when AOL like first started and I got on, I had a computer. So I was doing all that kind of stuff. And my friends were like, "Oh, you're a computer geek, or a computer nerd." Mm-hmm. And I was like, "Oh, okay." But I kind of when they said that, I was like, I took that with pride. I was like, "Yeah, I know more about computers than you do. I'm learning about something that's going to vastly change very soon."
Yeah.
And it did. Oh, truth. Wesley Blake. Thanks for watching.
Hey. Well, and then getting into a whole tech thing, that's another whole genre, I think, of being a geek versus a nerd. When you're talking about people like Bill Gates and building that tech up, they were definitely geeks as well. But now if you're super tech savvy, you're kind of seen in a different light. But back then, I think you were more of a nerd maybe. See, again, it's that conundrum. Are you a nerd? Are you a geek? Where are we at nowadays? Because we're kind of used to where we were. When I was growing up, nerd was the smart people, which I was one of those too. And I tried very hard not to be because of the negative connotation that came with it. So I like that there's a shift in that as well nowadays, is there's not so much of a negative connotation of being smart, of being an intellectual, because they see where intellectuals can go.
Now I see it more as interchangeable.
Yeah.
So a geek is a nerd and a nerd
in
is a
the
geek.
middle school culture, I don't even hear them use the word nerd anymore. They don't really. They don't pick at each other for being smart. Now, maybe that's because I have predominantly the gifted students, but even when I was at the Title I, the other kids would gravitate towards the kids that they felt were smart, and they just wanted them to help Can you help me with
you
my
help me?
work? Can you help me? So I don't think that that's as negative as that used to be either. That's just my opinion, though, from being a picked on kid in the junior high realm to being an educator in the junior high realm. I see the difference. And maybe too, the difference comes to me because I'm older. Right. And so I don't see it the same way, but I don't see the kids pick on each other for that kind of stuff, really.
Yeah, no, I can see that. And I can also, and I really do see that I think our Generation X kind of pushed that along to happen. So, yeah, that was it.
So that's a positive thing. I mean, we did.
I'm glad it's changed throughout the years, and it's become more mainstream because of that. Because we can share our love of these different geeky stuff with everybody, and that's a great thing. Yeah,
I still am sort of self-conscious when I wear some of these things that I like. The Animaniacs is not super geeky, but there are other things that I have. I have a Harley Quinn dress that I wear. I have a Pokemon dress that I wear. I have a dress with different skeletal parts on it that I wear.
Well, I have a Pokemon shirt that you can't really tell it's a Pokemon shirt.
Yeah. So when I first started wearing things like that, I was very self-conscious as an adult to go into my workplace and wear things like that. But I finally, as I'm older now, I just finally was like, I'm just going to go for that. And people just, the kids accept me, the grown-up, I will say some of the grown-ups have picked on me.
Yeah. Well, Wesley says, it's a day where we all are safer to be ourselves, whatever that looks like. But it seems whenever someone is bullied, is much more aggressive. The bullying is much more, when they are bullied for something, it's much more aggressive. But it's more of bullied for lifestyle, maybe?
Well, it's much more underhanded and aggressive because they're doing much more bullying behind a keyboard. They're doing it behind a phone. So they're sending bullying messages, so they're not in person. Back in our day, people were bullying, so they had to get up the nerve to tell you something to your face and be hurtful to you to your face and see that happen to you in the moment, right?
And now they can't do that.
And now they don't do that. They could,
well,
they
could,
don't.
But they don't.
They don't. Yeah.
Because they're cowards.
Well, because it's easier to be mean to someone when you're not looking at their face.
You're just looking at a screen.
It's easier to get this group mentality, this mob mentality online as well. So then you have lots of voices chiming in, right? So yeah, when somebody does get bullied, it is fairly intense. Yeah. It is fairly ugly. But you know what? A lot of the times, I'll tell you what they get bullied for is this one. And this is so funny. Well, not funny, but it's strange, but little kids.
Yeah.
This one was dating this one, and then this one started dating this other one, and they bully them for that. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, really? This is 7th grade
Awesome. That's great.
That's super awesome. So if you are in a weird relationship, you're a geek. No, I'm just kidding.
So tomorrow we'll actually be at PopCon at the Central Library.
Oh, cool. That's downtown.
All day. So downtown, we're going to be at the Big Enchiladas. So we're going to go check that out. And I hear Henry Thomas is going to be there of E.T.
Hush up.
Yeah, he actually wrote a book. So he's one of the authors that's going to be there.
I do love books. So I'm going to be excited.
That's going to be kind of cool. So we're going to go check that out. And if you want to go down there, it's at a free event tomorrow at the Central Library. And go do that. It'll be a lot of fun.
And the San Antonio Nerd Night's going to be there.
Yes.
Playing games. Running games. So you can go out there and play games.
And we'll also be out there talking about Game Expo. So Game Expo is happening March 15th through 17th. And we're going to have a lot of gaming fun. I'm going to announce it right now because it just happened. We finally got it happen. We have a major sponsor for this convention. It's Razer Gaming. So they're about to put out a new phone. They have a new phone coming, and then they do laptops and keyboards and mice and
all
a
of
whole
that,
bunch
yep.
of stuff. So they're going to be out there, and they're actually going to put on a game jam for creating mobile games. So be out there. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be playing board games, card games,
miniatures,
role-playing games. If it's gaming, it's there.
Yep.
So check it out. But thanks for checking us out. I'm Vince.
I'm Colleen. I'm a geek. That's Stuart. He's a geek. Back to Vince.
I'm Vince. I'm a geek. Geek out, SA.